Hey, well, welcome to another episode of the Restroom Recovery Podcast. Today with me is Kate Galliett. She's a fitness coach and owner of Fit for Real Life and author of The Unbreakable Body. So Kate, welcome.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here with you.
Yeah, great to have you. You know, I think the benefit of the social webs is you end up discovering a lot of people that you wouldn't, and you're one of those folks. And I really like the name of your business, you know, Fit for Real Life. It's ultimately like most of us are not professional athletes, but we do have some of those same objectives within the context of our life and being able to perform well in, you know, with our family and friends and in our own fitness pursuits. And then also, I really like the Unbreakable Body,
Thanks.
You know, title of your book. So, you know, a little bit about you, like how did those things kind of come about?
Yeah, thank you. And I appreciate the kudos on both of my brands that I operate with. It is a little challenging as a business owner to have two brands you're running with, but everyone loves it and connects in a different way to them. So it's good. Yeah. I actually started Fit for Real Life as a blog in 2008 because for about a year prior to that, I was working as a trainer. I'd already gotten my Bachelor of Science in Exercise Science. I knew this was like my lifelong, this is my thing I'm going to do for my life, is help people be better. And in this case, through fitness and movement and healing injuries and all of that. But I had started writing a newsletter to clients and friends of mine, and it was super janky. Like I didn't yet understand how to do blind carbon copy. So I would just put like old chainmail, like I would put it all in the 2-line and I'd write a little tip for the week. And it was, you're going to love this title. And from a business perspective, real knowledge for real life, tip of the week. And then it would be like a tip. I mean, it was super cheesy, but it like encompassed what I had already been practicing in my work in my gym. The clients I worked with, yeah, they wanted to have adventures. A lot of them they would go hiking or they wanted to go on a trip around the world or whatever, something that required being active at an older age. But more so, they were just aligning with what I already believed and hoped would be true, that this notion that it can be too late for you can't be real. This myth that you could ever be too old, in quotes, to do something has to be a lie. And that this is not too complicated for us to figure this out. I was already feeling that deep in my spirit due to a number of experiences I had had in my life, but I just wasn't seeing anyone accomplish that yet. And I didn't really know if it was possible until I met all of these clients I started working with. And whether it was serendipity or universal luck or whatever, these were the kind of people that were wanting to embody what I believed was true about the human body, but they didn't know how to go about doing it either. So it was like we came together and I was like, yes, real people, real fitness, real life. Like, yes, they want to hike the mountain in Africa, which was what one of my ladies did when she was like 60. But they want to like play with their grandkids. They want to do the 5K with their dog. They want to garden and be self-sufficient without needing like to hire a company to come help you work on your yard, you know, like real stuff that really impacts your life. And so real knowledge for real life was born. And then my friend was like, you should start a blog. And I was like, what's a blog? Because this, I mean, you know, right. Okay. But, and so she explained it to me and I was like, oh, that's awesome. And I thought about what my title could be. And I thought, oh, Fit for Real Life. That's what I like to do and be. So I should write about that. And so I did. And it was just this awesome thing to do I still write on Fit for Real Life. That poor site hasn't been updated in like a decade, but I still write there because I share what I'm doing, not just fitness wise, because that's the thing. Being fit for real life is exercise. Of course, it's body care, it's rest, it's thinking about your sleep quality and what you're doing to influence it. It's food, it's all of these things, but it's also, how are you living your life? What are you doing with your life? How are you creating a world that you live in every day that conspires with you to help you feel the way you want to feel and live the kind of life you want to live and have a body that you're really happy to be living in? And so that was where all that started. And I started a coaching practice online from that and opened my own gym from that kind of jumping off point. But when I owned my own gym, one of the things I was really motivated to achieve was to systematize things so that my clients that were coming in could feel something they really hadn't felt with coaching before, which was to feel autonomous, that they knew what was right for them and that they could make choices that were right for them and that they could feel confident in that process. Well, While we all do have some innate autonomy, we all inherently know somewhere inside of us what's right for us. Sometimes we need to learn some things first. How do tissues change? Where are the areas of my body I should focus on? How do I balance everything out so that I'm getting sleep and food and nutrition and the whole thing dialed in without killing myself doing it?
Right.
And so I started building the 6 pillars of an unbreakable body, the system I use now to teach them, okay, cover your 6 pillars. These are 6 areas of your body, bring them up with these various qualities and attributes to the level you need for the sports or life that you want to do. And you will be what we all call now unbreakable. And so I did that. And the natural next iteration of that was, oh, I should make an online program, which any entrepreneurs out there who are like, oh, the natural next thing I should do is scale. Stop first and have a conversation with yourself, because that is a journey that is going to take a lot out of you that you may not have expected. At least that was true for me.
Yeah.
But from that came to where we are now, where I've got a book called Becoming Unbreakable, How to Build a Body You Love to Live In, a program called The Unbreakable Body, a website, The Unbreakable Body, and now I'm managing all these brands and helping people realize they can be unbreakable and they can be fit for this real life they're living.
Well, I think that's a huge message, that it's that last little bit, right, that gets us over the hump that I think every human has a challenge with, including myself, somebody who's still been active, but you still run into that glass ceiling within yourself at times that, you know, like you said, you want to be autonomous. We all have that, but you also have some dependency of a knowledge gap to get there. But I like what you said though, too, about, you know, finding people of like mind, but we all bring our time and talents differently, and finding the people that they know what they know, but they don't know how yet. And that's kind of how you kind of married up with some folks. And I feel like that's a lot out there.
I do. And I think that's really important, and something I try to teach in my book and in my coaching and even in one-on-one time with my clients. Like, yes, there's going to be, I always talk about this, like there's the explorer's mindset, which is what I teach to my folks, is like this way of going about looking at your world, experimenting with things to learn what's right for you and to curate this unique protocol that works for you for back pain, fitness, triathlon training, whatever. A part of that within the explorer's mindset is this thing I call 3 whats and a who. And this helps to structure how you go about doing that, because I think everyone can agree, yeah, I should do experiments with my body. Got it. Now what? Like, which
How do I do the experiment?
How, and how do I do a good experiment? How do I collect data from that? So 3 whats and a who is what external signals might have contributed to what you're experiencing. So if we have foot pain, let's do a simple one. Strong feet is one of the 6 pillars of an unbreakable body. If you have foot pain, maybe an external signal is the shoes you wear, or the concrete floor that you stand on at your job all day, or the fact that you don't do anything to massage them. You just leave your feet at the end of the day. It's like the lack of a signal of massage, for example. The next what of 3 whats and a who is what internal signals could be contributing to what you're experiencing. And internal signals, of course, could be things like the overall health of the tissues. Do you do foot training? Do you massage your feet? How's your overall health? Like, do you have a lot of inflammation in your body? Do you have a sickness or a disease that you're dealing with? And those first 2 questions, before we go on to the next one, people still get stumped there. They're like, well, I don't know what I'm supposed to look up. And that's where I leave it with my client or my reader, is like, I know you don't know. I'm going to help you get a jumping off point by sharing education, but you can find this out. I did. I'm not more special than you. I figured all this stuff out too, just by researching and reading, and also learning to look at research and going, that seems more likely, but not this other part of what they're talking about. I think I'll take that part and use it, but not throw the baby out with the bathwater, because I disagree with what they say about this other aspect of how they see feet, for example. So this gets people looking and learning and trying to go, how do I ask better questions and gather the data that I need? So those are the first 2 whats, but it's 3 whats and a who. So what external signals, what internal signals, and then what's the opportunity here? I really like folks to remember that, because when you're facing a challenge, yes, it's a huge pain in the butt. No one wants to deal with challenges, but challenges are how we grow. So I always reframe it as an opportunity. What's the opportunity here? Well, if your feet hurt, the opportunity is to learn about your feet, maybe learn about the rest of your body and how the strength or lack thereof up top is contributing to what's going on down below. We can learn about things we never knew about footwear and about massage, and you have an opportunity there. So figure out what the opportunity is. And then it's 3 what's and a who. So the last one is who can help. And that's to come back around to what you were saying. If you're someone who's like, I want to be fit for real life, but I don't know how, you need to say, who can help me? And then you start looking around. And this teaches you to evaluate experts and learn who might be aligning with what you're looking for. So many of the clients I work with are like, what you're saying makes sense. And I just feel like it aligns. And I'm like, I totally get that, because I see people on social media or experts in the, larger world of medicine or science or whatever. And I'm like, that makes sense. Or I don't align with them, or we don't agree on that. So maybe I'll look for someone else or take what I need and use it on my own and not do the rest. Yeah. So being able to learn to think for yourself and look for the right experts. Cause I don't know about you, but like, I've certainly had some experiences in my life where experts were telling me things that were not helping me. And I should not listen to those experts. They might've meant well, but they certainly weren't helping me on my journey because of the lens and the view that they had on the world. So with 3 what's and a who, that's one part of the larger explorer's mindset. I think you could find the people that align with what you're feeling inside that you want to achieve.
So how do you discern what's the process that, well, one, I like the encouraging word is like the experimentation. I think oftentimes we get caught up in this binary right or wrong on things, but it's more like a good, better, best based on your circumstance, and trying to work with that dichotomy, I guess, it is a struggle where, you don't want to you want to pick what works for you, but without being like truthiness, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm. What's the process? Is that really what you just explained, and then decide, do, and then assess?
Yeah. So there's 3 parts to the explorer's mindset. First, you need to explore. And then we're doing that all the time forever. We're exploring our environment, both externally and internally. We're exploring and collecting data. Think of an explorer. I always say this in the book. You're the first person to land on Earth, or pick your planet. Nobody has been here, like no one. So you don't know anything, and you need to figure out what's here, what's not here, what's working, what do you need to put in place? What skills are you going to need to learn to work with what's here? And then you need to get going on that. So as humans living in bodies, we need to explore all the time. Once you've been exploring, and you probably will already be aware of something that you're like, my feet hurt, or my back hurts, or I hate that I can't do a push-up. You already know the thing you probably want to work on. Right. Now it's time to do an experiment. So you do 3 what's and a who to figure out how to set up your experiment. And then we run through what is essentially the scientific method. We're going to set a hypothesis. I think if I massage my feet every day, then my feet will feel better. And then you do it for a period of time. And I teach you how to set parameters so that you aren't doing it forever, waiting to see if it works, and you aren't quitting too early before change might have actually happened. Once you've run your experiment for the duration of the parameters that you've set, you collect your data again, and you say, okay, should I put this in my curated list of stuff that works for me? Or should I say, nope, that didn't really make a change, or it only made a small change. And like you alluded to, you never do it wrong, because that experiment moved you closer to the thing that is going to be right for you. In my own personal health journey, I can't tell you how many things I had to do to get to the curated list that I live in today. And I'm still experimenting, but people look at me and they're like, oh, it must be easy for you. Not so much. Like, my health was a mess. My body was it was just a disaster, what I was dealing with of my own creation, frankly. But I couldn't get to knowing myself so well today and what exactly my body needs if I hadn't gone through all the experiments before. So a perfect example, if someone's got foot pain right now, you could maybe you're already massaging and you're like, well, I'm already doing that. Cool. What else in your environment, externally or internally, could you change? If you've never done foot strengthening exercises, I always say this, if you've got a body thing and you're not doing some sort of movement thing to experiment with it, you should probably start there, because movement is a force on your body. Tissues respond to forces. That's how they change. There's no they also change to lack of force and being inactive and sedentary, which is what most people are dealing with today. So they're like, well, my shoulder's killing me. I'm like, I know. What have you been doing for it? What has it been experiencing for the last 10 years? If we aren't experimenting with movement, I really think that's an important place to start. And so
yeah, no, that's a great point, because so many of us, you have the pain and being able to discern between pain injury and pain soreness. But like you're talking about coming, I want to say out of sedentary, but if you're feeling pain, is it because you're sedentary? I recall having a shoulder problem for a while because wasn't really working out or doing things. And then over time, started to get more active again. The pain went away when I realized I was actually doing something to build strength in the structure.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's so important because I have a whole chapter in the book on pain. I think as like lots of things in the normal world where you hear like a commercial about something, stuff gets shrunk down to like a bite-sized 10-second whatever synopsis of it. And pain is so much more complex than that. Not too complex for the average individual, but a quote I use in the book is like, it's a bit like a constellation. Constellations are like stars in the sky that someone said, hey, looks like a monkey. Okay, we're going to call it John. All right, that's John the monkey. We just put those together. That's kind of like what pain does. It takes these various parts of our lives, including thoughts, experiences, sedentary behavior, excessive training, not having a strong base, like you haven't built up your body's capacity yet, but you're doing a bit more than what you can tolerate. Stress levels, finances, all these things can influence to create an experience of pain for yourself, but there's not one of them that is like, that's the trigger that caused the pain. It's all of it coming together. And to your point, our bodies respond to force. And when we're sedentary, we are going to feel pain, just like if we're overdoing it for what our body is tolerant of. I teach something about, I got this from Dr. Scott Dye, who's a knee doctor out in California. He developed this thing called the zones of tissue tolerance. And I think it's a really great way to look at tissue tolerance and help the layperson who has not gotten a degree in this to really understand their body better. So he's got 4 zones. I think I'll just lay them out real briefly and we'll avoid going into the detail. People can read the book if they want to do that. But if you picture like a typical graph where there's an X and a Y axis, okay? So if people can picture that, at the very closest to the base where the X and the Y meet, like at the very lowest level, that is our zone of subphysiologic underload. In this zone, people who are sedentary, bedridden, injuries like that you have to put a cast on, the tissues haven't gotten enough strain, stress, and force movement to maintain tissue homeostasis. Now, tissue homeostasis is just tissues are happy, they're turning over at a nice rate, there isn't too much inflammation, we're not having things turn into kind of sub-quality, low-quality tissue, everything's doing really well. So in that first zone of subphysiologic underload was maybe your shoulder issue, not getting enough to then have enough tolerance to tolerate daily activity. After that one, we're kind of going to go up and to the right now on the X and Y graph. You've got this zone of homeostasis and everything's going great. And in that zone, when you're operating in that zone, you can tolerate all the forces that are placed on your body. We want that zone to be as big as possible because then you can do a heavy workout and it's still pretty darn close to the top end of your zone of homeostasis. Then after that, Scott put this little thick line on it called the envelope of function. And this, as coaches, is where we hang out with our clients. We're trying to get you just to that envelope of function and maybe just even a touch over the edge of it because this is adaptation, right? This is how you get faster when you run. This is how you get stronger in the gym or in your body weight workouts. After that envelope of function, though, is the next zone, and it's called the zone of supraphysiologic overload. And in that zone, we don't want to hang out there a lot because we're going to start losing tissue homeostasis, which means we're going to start having tissue breakdown. But anyone who knows how workouts work is we got to break down the tissue a little bit so that it can recover and get stronger. So that's our third zone. And now the furthest one up and to the right, we would really like to avoid that as much as we can. And we do that by making the other zones very big. That zone of homeostasis very big, then pushes that one up. But that fourth zone is called the zone of structural failure. And that is when catastrophic injury is going to happen. When I fell and tore my ACL, that was the zone of structural failure for my ACL. When you break a bone, zone of structural failure. There's usually not much you can do to train to avoid that other than to make your zones much larger, but you can avoid them in that way and then avoid things like being in a car accident, which sometimes you can't really avoid that. Falling off your mountain bike, again, sometimes you can't really avoid that, but you can live smart to try to avoid those catastrophic situations whenever you can. But with those four zones, I think any person can go, oh, I bet my back is hurting because I'm training really hard and I'm trying to do my best and I'm trying to go hard like I see the CrossFit athletes go, but maybe it's too much and I'm not getting enough time in that zone of homeostasis. Conversely, a lot of other folks, I think, will go, if I'm being honest with myself, I don't think I have a really big zone of homeostasis. I'm probably under doing a little bit. I need to add some. This also has this kind of secondary benefit that I don't even know if I'd never asked him. I don't know if Dr. Dye thought of this when he did this, but by having the 4 zones graduated like that, it helps the layperson who doesn't really want a strength and conditioning degree to go, okay, if doing too much puts me in that zone where things kind of start to go wonky or failure happens, and doing too little is not good either. Okay, maybe I should start to take a graduated approach to this, because how many people do you know? Maybe you've done it yourself. I sure have in the past, who just overdo it because they're like, I'm gonna work out. I'm gonna get 5 days a week. That's what the Olympic athlete does. That's what I'm doing. That's what my neighbor Jim does. He does intermittent fasting and he trains for triathlons and he's a weightlifter too. But it's too much.
It's like the New Year's resolution syndrome.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, I'm ready and I think I need a ton. But if you look at the zones of tissue tolerance, you need to build up so that you push all your zones up into the right and thus make yourself more tolerant to way more things.
Yeah. And it's really kind of that, steady as she goes, or, one book that I talk about probably on half the conversations I've had is Atomic Habits, is that mindset of the 1% better. And we get fired up, like you were saying at the beginning, and you got the energy and you're ready to go, but we overdo it in the loading process and trying to get to our, 2-year goal in 3 months.
Yeah. I think that's funny too, because it overlooks the reality of nature and biology. Like tissue adaptation takes time.
Yeah.
I need a good example is calluses. If you do manual labor in the yard all summer long, like you're going to have calluses on your hand by the end of the summer. But if you pick up a kettlebell and swing it 100 times the first time you've ever done that, you're probably going to rip the skin on your knuckle area inside your palm because the force was too much too soon without enough recovery time, versus the yard work, which was lighter but consistent and had ample recovery time. Our tissues inside of us are no different. We need slow adaptation over time, but our brain really likes to get going on but I want change now part of it.
Yeah. I can totally relate. I mean, I can probably look back at a lot of the things. Heck, not too long ago, I felt awesome. I hadn't been back in CrossFit for long, and it was a pretty intense workout that had a lot of posterior chain stuff. And it's a weak spot for me too. I felt great in the workout. 2 days later, my body said, no, you don't. And it was like completely different, complete overload.
Yeah.
That overtraining moment.
I think those moments are so important too. And they're not moments to beat yourself up, although we all do. So
sure.
I hear you, we've done it. I've done it. But when you can learn to live with an explorer's mindset and really look at like, what did that tell me? And how can I use that in the future? I think you really can completely transform those experiences, because my therapist said this to me once, so I got to give her good credit. How can you know what you can handle unless you let yourself see what you can handle? Yeah. How can you know if you can handle overwhelm unless you let yourself get overwhelmed? It's like we need to go to these experiences to have the experience and go, that is how I gain wisdom. That is how I turn an understanding of like, I shouldn't go too hard to, oh no, I shouldn't go too hard. I think I was telling you before we started, I have a new puppy. And he's great. We're doing awesome. However, I am not sleeping a lot lately. And I know now, I have the wisdom after 20 years of living in my own unbreakable body to know doing a lot of cardio right now, terrible idea. Heavy workouts, awful idea, much as I want to. Because of course, right, when you get colds or fatigue, that's when you're like, but I want to work out because it gives you that endorphin rush. But I know not to. I know that going outside in the sunshine is going to be much more beneficial. Getting a nap if I can, avoiding excess alcohol or treats or sweets or anything like that. And then light things. So literally I picked up my weights yesterday, walked down the hallway, walked back, set them down, and did that regularly throughout the day. Was it a workout? No, not really. But was it useful for my body? For sure, because it helped me still stay moving and still stay active without it coming anywhere close to overloading my body, because I've got this other stressor that's kind of bringing me down in terms of tolerance right now. Yeah.
So as a coach, how do you talk to people about acknowledging that micro win? Because I mean, I had this conversation with a friend on a run one time where we were talking about, and I said it earlier, is the binary piece is like we go on or off. And, I look back at, I'm an endurance runner. So there were times where I slept in and I was supposed to get a 7-mile run in, say, but instead of going out and doing 2 to 3, I just didn't. Right. And what you just explained to me is acknowledging where you are and then doing something directionally correct.
Yeah.
How do you work through that mindset piece with clients or those listening?
Yeah, I can relate. I am definitely a lifelong recovering perfectionist and was very similar. If I was going to miss my workout, I would do something to make it even worse. Like, fine, then we're going out drinking at the bar tonight, or we're having just tons of desserts or pasta for dinner with no protein or whatever. Like, I would just do something
the opposite direction.
Go the opposite way, right? And that's like, I literally am just like shooting myself in the foot, right? But for me personally, that came from a place of perfectionism. And I try to share that story with my one-on-one clients a lot and talk about my own experience with that, because they do look at coaches and think, you guys must have it all figured out. But the only reason we do is because we've been through it, you know, most of the time. I think most coaches have been through some stuff. So I start with that, like with my one-on-one folks, we talk about personal experience and just boneheaded things I've done in the past that, like, I can understand why I did it now, because I practice something I call curious compassion. And that, it really simply, here's what curious compassion is. It's going from the exasperated, ugh, to the curious, huh. And if you can do that, you completely change what you're looking at. You might still not like it. You might still be like, I need to hold myself more accountable to the alarm clock. I need to make sure I get to bed earlier so I get up on time. Or what I would get a lot with my triathletes is, maybe I need to look at like the fact that I'm burned out and I don't actually want to do this right now, but I'm thinking I should because it's part of my identity.
Yep.
That's a hard conversation, but it's going to be a lot easier if you can use curious compassion and recognize that there's something in here for you to learn, to use, to work with, and to help you get to the next thing. And that really nobody else's opinion of you matters anyways. So, I mean, unless you have a spouse and you're like, oh, I really care what they think of me, of course, you know, kids, whatever. But besides that close unit, and even that, I don't think your spouse cares if you're a triathlete or not. They're just like, are you happy? Hopefully that's what they're asking you. And when we can provide that kind of support for ourselves, it really is game changing, because we are our own best advocate always, even if we have the most supportive spouse or best friends, or our social circle is like us and they also are healthy and health conscious or whatever. At the end of the day, none of that matters as much as your opinion of yourself. And we can't go through life hating ourselves. We can try, but you're going to run into a brick wall a million times over. And I think some of those, like, going the opposite way like I did, or instead of going out for 2 or 3, just go, oh, forget it, I'm just not even going to do it anyways.
Yeah.
It's perfectionism, and it's wanting to control what we can and wanting to beat ourselves up for what we think we did wrong.
Yeah.
Anyone listening and paying attention, like, that is such a normal thing. I think if we can normalize that, like, you're not alone if you've done that to yourself. But this is our opportunity to grow with that attribute. I don't think we get any attribute of our personality that isn't there for us to use and work with. None of it's there to harm us or to be like the old title, ego is the enemy, right? I get where Ryan Holiday's coming with that, but it's not an enemy. It's something to work with. It's something to use. And when we can capture that, I think it's a game changer.
Yeah, I had a conversation with a friend about that, where, like, your greatest strength cuts both ways when it's not in the term you used, homeostasis. When it's not in balance, it's also the other end of that, I guess yin and yang or whatever you want to call it, but where it can be a detriment at times when it's out of whack.
Yeah. Every trait has a shadow side. Like Alan Watts said, you can't have a mountain without having a shady side of the mountain. Every mountain has a shady side. You have to have that. That's just how it works. And
there's value to both too. There is value to both.
Exactly. Like, I want shade, so let's go on. That's where the deer are. They're hanging out over there. Let's go check out and see. And we watch some animals.
Yeah.
It's fascinating to be a human. And I think movement and training and becoming unbreakable is, like, that's why I say it's a lifelong journey to have. And it's the greatest journey you will ever go on, because you will learn more about yourself, your environment, how to engage with the world around you, and even people around you, simply by going into the experience with your body as an opportunity, as the opportunity that it is, which is, it's the opportunity of a lifetime, frankly, in my opinion.
That lifetime, we only get one of them. And so it's like, you want to optimize it as well as you can.
Yeah.
And a perfectionist mindset, beating yourself up does not help you get there. It's like putting on an emotional flak jacket. that's going to drag you down.
Yeah. And think about that. Even if you took your explorer's mindset and started to investigate the perfectionism, what is this useful for? What external signals have contributed to this? I've done this for myself with various personality traits of mine. Why am I like this? Well, I remember my parents saying this. I remember school, I cared about that. I remember experiences I had. Maybe those shaped some of this. Okay,
Yeah.
what internal things? Well, I can always remember feeling like I wasn't good enough if I didn't do X, Y, and Z. That might be contributing to that. Okay, what's the opportunity here? Maybe learn to use my perfectionism as a tool instead of as something that's harming me when it gets out of control. Okay, who can help me? Therapist, myself, spouse, friend, podcast, books. Like, you have the world at your fingertips now to get the help that you need for anything. You just have to do it.
Yeah. And I like going back to your earlier point of having that explorer's mindset is like, because the overwhelm can happen because there are that many options, but again, none of them are wrong. Just, you don't know until you get there.
Yeah.
On the other side of it, and you're like, okay, that was okay, but maybe this will work a little bit better.
Yeah. And even that, like, there are so many things out there, and you'll get recommendations all the time. I tell my readers all the time, hell, I'm loving this podcast. I'm loving this book. Maybe you'll love it too. Yeah. Knowing like, you might not, it might not be the right thing for you at this time. But even in the 20 plus year practice now of living this way, I can discern when someone I follow who I appreciate their work and they mention this guy who's got a YouTube channel. And I'm like, wow, this guy looks kind of interesting. I can discern now, like, do I have room for this in my life? And do I need to listen to this person right now? That might be awesome. That might be great. I might circle back around to this later. But like right now, for example, that actually happened today. A person I read their newsletter, they showed me a YouTube and their little thing. And I was like, oh, that looks really good. And then I was like, I'm already doing a gardening academy, and we have a new puppy, and I'm in another group that is like a wellness group.
Yeah.
And I know what I'm doing in my business right now, and I know where I'm going. Do I really need to add this into my life right now? Or is this just distracting me from all that other stuff? And so I just bookmarked the guy's YouTube and was like, maybe I'll come back to that in 30 days or 90 days, or maybe I'll just forget about it and be like, oh yeah, see, that wasn't probably great work. Not on the same path as me at this time.
That is such a great practical, like, thought process because of all the things, the interwebs. There's plenty of information. It's now culling it down to see if it's appropriate. And you can get caught up. I know I can get caught up as an explorer at times doing constant exploring, but never applying. Yep. Right. You're always searching, and you get that dopamine hit with the search because it's fun.
Yep.
But you don't ever graduate past that application piece where, the real fruit is.
Yeah, exactly. It's why we need structure for ourselves, because if we lean more towards analysis paralysis, where we love researching, or we're on the other end of the spectrum where we're like, I'm not going to look anything up for the most basic things because I don't have the energy, bandwidth, time, interest, desire, whatever. Mm-hmm. Or you're somewhere along that spectrum. Like, we need a way to structure ourselves to say, okay, look, here are the bumper bowling lanes, stay within them. Like, you're going this direction. If what you're doing is not moving you in a direction, like, we need to get that going. And a lot like how tissues change, movement, non-physical, like what you're saying, like, you need to take action. You need to go, okay, I've read enough. Now here's what I'm doing. That's movement. It's pretty similar to how tissues change. Your brain and chemistry and personality and habits also don't change if you don't start moving on something.
Yeah, absolutely. So we kind of talked around some of this is what I would call expectation management. Or, I've been hearing the word permission, right? So how do you work through that? I mean, we kind of talked through it, but how do you work through expectation management to not normalize certain things, but to enable people to realize, okay, that hurdle or bump or, failure is a valid part of the equation?
Yeah. I would be lying if I didn't say what I'm about to say. I'm pretty blunt with people, and I'm also much more realist than I am optimist at times. And so I'm like, this is going to suck. I'm going to tell you how bad it's going to suck.
It is what it is.
We can do this. And I'm saying it with a smile on my face, and we can do this. I will always follow it up like, we can totally do this. Because it's going to suck. Like, my health healing journey sucked for so much of the time with the restrictive diets I had to do and the supplements and the treatments and the costs. Like I owe my life to the naturopath I worked with that really got me on a better path to healing a bunch of the chronic issues I was dealing with. I don't know where I would be today without him. And so I'm so thankful. But like, it wasn't easy. It wasn't cheap. It wasn't fun half of the time, but I had hit the point where I was like, I can't go on being like how I am. So whatever it's going to cost or take or do, I am willing to do that. And it wasn't perfect. Like the first time in the very beginning, I had no money. I was still like a poor 20 something with poor money management. And so, but I was like, I need to do this. And I was like, okay, I can't do a lot of sessions because they're like, I don't know, $70 a session, which was like a lot to me back then. So give me one session. I'll come once a month, and I can't buy all the supplements or change my diet or do all the treatments or whatever. What's one thing I can do? And he did that with me. We worked on one thing once a month, and I somehow scrounged up the money every month. And then I was able to do more as time went on, both financially and in my actions, right? Because I slowly built the process. But then we got to like, when he's like, okay, well, we've done a lot of good stuff to detoxify the stuff you had in your body and dealing with, I had a lot of like medical garbage back in the old days, but we've gotten our body to a better state, but it looks like you're intolerant to gluten based on some things that we did. And I was like, so does that mean no beer? And he's like, it means no to a lot of things that you eat. And I'm like, well, that's stupid. And I was 2 weeks in to my gluten-free diet. This was in 2007. So way before good gluten-free stuff was out too.
Yeah.
Weeks in. And I was like, yeah, but brownies sound really good. Like I still had like sugar cravings a lot back then. And I was like, surely it won't be that bad. Surely it won't be that bad. Anyone who's done a diet where you do something, especially gluten or dairy, and then you've put it back in, oh boy, it was that bad. I was like, oh, I really don't respond well to gluten. And I've since tested it several times in several ways. And I make gliadin antibodies. I don't do well with gluten, but it was such a good experience to go, whoops. Okay, my body's telling me what I need to know. I'll never do that again. And I needed to have that experience to go, yep, not worth it to ever do it again. People are like, well, what if you went to Paris and they had bread? And I'm like, not worth it. Like, it's not worth it. I felt so horrible physically, mentally, emotionally in particular, that I was like, not worth it to do that to myself again. Absolutely not. So when I'm talking with my clients, I'm like, I'm going to just like, this is not going to be fun some of the time. And we're going to make it as fun as we can. I think movement can be very fun. I think setting habits can be fun, but it also sucks. So like, that's the silver lining for you. It sucks, but we'll get through it. It'll be great.
You'll feel great on the back end, but for now, it is what it is.
It is what it is. Sometimes we just need to chop wood, carry water. Like life wasn't supposed to be a roller coaster ride that is like really delightful all the time. It's going to come with challenges. And anyone who's gone to school remembers doing homework they didn't really want to do, but you do it anyways because you needed to get the grade and get on with the thing and not have your parents yell at you. Yep. Anyone who's raised children, not that I have, but I watch my friends, I'm raising a puppy now, but anyone who's raised children knows it's not all peaches. Like there are hard times. You have to teach discipline. You have to teach values. You have to be telling them they did something wrong and helping to guide them, but then showing love. Like nothing in this world is supposed to be super fun and fairy tale happiness all the time.
Yeah.
If you can accept that, like, there are going to be phases of this that just are like, then you can go, okay, let me turn that into what can I do with this? And you'll be able to move forward.
Yeah. That subtle shift will be a huge change.
Yeah.
So your book, you said you had 6 pillars.
Yeah.
What are those 6 key pillars?
The 6 pillars of an unbreakable body, starting from the ground up, are strong feet. We need to have strong feet, not only because they're the thing we stand on, but they influence structures up above. But most importantly, they are one of your greatest sensory information tools. And that tells your brain so much about how you operate. We need as much and as thorough sensory information as we can get. And things like the wrong footwear, poor foot strength, how the skeletal structure of the foot starts to change as we get adaptations that aren't ideal. These are all things that negatively influence the sensory input that gets to our brain, which then negatively influences how our body positions itself for posture and how it breathes and how it structures itself when we do a squat. Wow. So we start with strong feet. After that, we move on to mobile hips, which I think everybody kind of go, oh yeah, my hips are tight. I need more hip mobility. But when that, like mobile shoulders is another of the pillars. If we're lacking mobility at these two joints that are supposed to have the greatest amount of mobility, we are absolutely going to have to compensate in other ways. So mobile hips is one, then we'll jump ahead. Mobile shoulders is another. We also have strong glutes. That's another pillar of an unbreakable body. And I use strong glutes as a focus on like, one, we obviously need it for propulsion. Two, we need it for shifting our weight left to right. And that is super important, whether you're an athlete or just someone who walks from the kitchen to the living room. Walking requires you shift your body weight. And when you lose the ability to do that very well, again, you're going to compensate. In addition, strong glutes, I think, serve as a very good proxy for how strong you are overall and how much muscle mass you have. Okay. Because if you don't have strong glutes, you probably don't have strong other parts of your body, because you get strong glutes by strength training or doing a heavy manual labor lifestyle or job. And that muscle mass is really important for aging populations. And not just when you're 90, when you're 40, when you're 35, you need muscle mass for your body to function properly and optimally. So that's strong glutes. After that, strong torso is another pillar of an unbreakable body. And that encompasses everything from the base of your neck where your vocal folds are, all the way down to your pelvic floor and everything in between. And then all the muscles from the back of the spine, all the way around to the front and all the way deep inside to your guts and your viscera and all the things that are in there. So when we make our torso strong, we're not just doing planks or saying, oh yeah, I can do crunches and leg raises. We're looking at like, can you breathe properly? Do you actually move the right things in the right times in the right directions? How do you brace your body? Do you brace too much for what you actually need? And so you're overusing tissues every day that you bend over because you're not bracing properly. So that's strong torso in a nutshell. And then, as I said, we have mobile shoulders. And finally, the sixth pillar is strong posture, which when I talk to women about strong posture, especially my women that are kind of closer to my mom's age, the first thing they do when I say strong posture is they go and they're like, oh, yep, I'm going to sit up straight and pull my shoulders back, because that's what they were taught. Shoulders back, chest out, right? Like neck back. But that's not strong posture. That's actually very weak posture, because you're having to work very hard to hold that position for a long period of time if you're going to hold it like that all day long. Strong posture actually is the ability to hold multiple positions and move through them with just enough tension to do the job effectively and efficiently. And so really when we're training strong posture, we're training, yes, back muscles and shoulders, the things people think of traditionally, but, and I talk about this in the book, we take it further into your nervous system. And if you are able to oscillate between rotation of your body, between flexing and extending, between ramping up into the sympathetic nervous system and down into the parasympathetic nervous system, that is a person who's going to have stronger posture. A quote my friend Galina used in her new book that just came out was, a healthy nervous system is one that can change directions. And that change directions is exactly what I'm talking about with strong posture. If you can quickly change directions or move into different shapes and positions and do so without needing to hold excess tension to do it, you have strong posture. And I train people how to do that in the book and in my fitness programs.
Okay, great. Yeah, that last one, I immediately thought of like the classic, pulling a muscle, so to speak, of like somebody reaching or overreaching and tweaking something. And it's really because we don't do the consistent little things that you're talking about.
Yeah. Yeah. And we need to see movement as something to work with rather than to just tick the box up. And here's what I mean by that. So many folks, which I understand why the fitness industry didn't do us any favors on this front, think of exercise and movement as squat goes like this, from standing to bending the knees, and then we stand up again. Deadlift goes like this. I stand up and then I push the hips back and hinge over, and then I stand back up, and that's it. Shoulder press, up, down, right? It's very like linear. And yes, let's train linear stuff, but your life is not linear. And so one of the things I teach is like, make your life an opportunity to move in different ways. I have this new YouTube series I'm doing called the Fit for Real Life Diaries. And the first episode I did was like, sit on the floor. Here's where I sit on the floor. Here's what I do when I sit on the floor. Here's why you want to sit on the floor. Here's things you can do when you're sitting on the floor to be more comfortable if it's not comfortable yet. Yeah. Because even something like that, like sit on the floor for 5 minutes a day instead of in a chair, that will give your body more movement and more variety of movement than, oh yeah, I did squats and I sat down to the chair and I stood back up and I sat down and I stood back up. Those are great. You should be able to do that, have leg strength and all that good stuff. But you also need to have all of these in between things. And we develop that by making sure we can oscillate from position to position, from left to right, from front to back, and so on.
Well, that's a great practical, like you hear the term functional fitness all the time, but like what you're just saying is I'm calling a micro workout, but you're changing your posture, which changes the engagement on your body.
Yeah.
So like if you're sitting on the floor with nothing behind you, like right now I'm kind of slouching, as a matter of fact, straighten up, that you have to engage your core differently. So you actually have to brace yourself and work a little bit, where most people listening are sitting at a desk all day and you start doing kind of the hunch over sitting at a desk.
Yeah. And I think people think it doesn't make a difference because it's only a few minutes. And like, how could it be effective? Because we all think, oh, that killer CrossFit workout, that's how change happens, right? But it's so amazing. Like small things add up and we forget that so quickly. Yes. Little things make a difference over the long haul. Like, I don't know any other way to put it other than to just like, folks, remember, little things add up. They really do. And you also we're not trying to get to this end goal of like, who's the most strong posture in the planet. We're trying to live a long life and live it well. And so sitting on the floor invites you to live well in a new way that you aren't doing when you're sitting in a chair. Sitting in a chair also invites you to live well and do that. But then you then appreciate, wow, when I sit on the floor, it's kind of hard. I'm not very good at it yet. It like makes my body tired to hold myself up. But then that can get you thinking creatively like, okay, well, how else could I sit on the floor? And boy, I'll be thankful when I can go back to sitting in my chair tonight. Like it just expands your experience of living your life by doing something as simple as sitting on the floor.
Yeah. And it goes back to what we were touching on earlier, was expectation management. And like you were saying, just that change, that slight nuance on the, that just that little bit of difference.
Yeah. It makes a huge difference. And I really believe that more people will feel more capable to feel amazing in their body and be fit for real life when they feel like it's doable and approachable. And that is what I try to do in my entire practice of working with clients and in this book, is to help people see through systems, structures, mental models, tips, ideas, little easy mnemonics to remember, to be like, oh, I actually can do this. And yes, now I understand the zones of tissue tolerance, but I don't know how to work out safely. Cool. Who can help? Maybe you, Scott, maybe me, maybe a book they could purchase about how to exercise. Like it gives you the next step to then go, now, how do I take the next step after that? And I think if more people feel empowered to do that and confident that they actually can make a difference, you're going to change the existence of how people feel in their bodies, what's possible then when you feel that much better in your body.
And I think going back to the reoriented thinking, if like using certain terms and not associating your identity with as an athlete. But I mean, we're all everyday athletes because we move. And if you move, then like there's athleticism required in life. And so that little reframing again, back to the Atomic Habits, where he talks about the 1% better and taking those steps towards your vision. Like if you're coming couch to 5K, we'll just start with getting the running shoes and putting them on and walking out the door. Don't go run the 5K yet.
Yeah.
And kind of your own personal life example of that slow boil to success.
I think a lot of people don't trust themselves, and I get why. I didn't trust myself for a very long time. I think if we don't think if we aren't bringing the heat, we're worried that we might slack off too much and worried like, well, what if I really am a slacker? What if I really am not motivated to do this? What if I'm not enough? That's usually what it comes up to.
Yeah.
I think a lot of us don't trust ourselves. And this is an opportunity to learn to trust yourself and to learn to find the areas where maybe you trust yourself with fitness, but you don't trust yourself with food. And so you stay on a restrictive diet because that's the only way you feel like you can manage it at this time. Maybe you don't trust yourself with doing your mobility work that you know is going to make you feel better, but you still don't do it. And like examining like, well, why is that? What if you find something in there that tells you like, oh my God, I'm a terrible person who won't do their mobility work. Right. Believe me, you're not going to find terrible person stuff, but you are going to find some interesting things about yourself that will inform you about who you are and make you a better person because you'll learn to work with those things.
And I think, for folks like yourself, and dispelling the mindset that you don't need a coach, or shouldn't go get a coach or invest in one, because there's all these different, I use the term glass ceilings a lot, that we put in front of ourselves to say no, probably in part from fear of being exposed in some way or whatever. But using coaches and finding coaches, there's enough communities out there like yourself who offer the services to kind of get you through those barriers.
Yeah, it's really important. And I feel like that's very relevant to me right now, because like I said earlier, I'm doing this gardening academy because I want to learn how to be a better gardener and actually produce a good amount of food for my garden, not just like whatever happens to not die by the time it's ready to harvest,
Right.
And there is no shortage of gardening education for free on the internet. Like, so much information, you could just never do anything. But I realized, like, I could keep reading for sure. And I've learned a lot from just reading on the internet or buying books, but a structured program where there's a coach leading a class each week about something I need to learn, asking how we're doing with stuff, having us be accountable to things, social organization with other people, like, oh, we're going to chit chat about gardening today on the Zoom call. Like, it provides a structure and guidance that is worth paying for to me, because I really want the outcome from that. And like all teachers, at least this is how I operate. I don't know if all teachers are like this. I want you to not need me eventually. I want you to have enough information to go, wow, I feel like I really made progress there. I'm going to take that and go on now to maybe another thing I'm doing, or maybe I'll invest in a different coach or have no coach for a little while. But that's the goal for me. And that's my goal with this gardening academy. I'm like, I'll do it for the season. And then in November, I'll reassess. I'll check my experiment. What did I learn? How did it go? Was it worth it for me? If I end up still killing a bunch of things, well, maybe I didn't learn enough in the academy. Maybe it's the academy's fault. Probably not, because they've got a lot of education. Maybe it was something I did. Okay, well, what did I do? How can I do that better next year? Fitness and movement is no different.
That's great. So Kate, kind of coming up on time, I really appreciate your insight, your perspective, the practicality of what you bring. I'd like to close things out with a few personal questions, or hot seat, so to speak.
Sure.
So what are you reading right now?
Well, the Gardening Academy pretty much is what I'm reading and watching right now. But in terms of books, I have this, what is it called? The Righteous Mind by Jonathan Haidt. I'm reading that right now. It's all about why people think they think what they think. And it's about critical thinking and reasoning. Like, why do people pick the politics they pick? Why do they pick the religion that they pick? Why are we so sure about what we think? And it's all about the moral psychology of how we come to conclusions. What I'm learning so far is that most of us have no idea why we think what we think, and we need to do a little more investigating. And I've been really enjoying that, because I'm like, wow, I want to continue to improve my ability to like understand why I think what I think. And am I just parroting something I heard somewhere and thinking, oh yeah, that's what I think too. So it's a tough read. It's not exactly the lightest book I've ever read, but The Righteous Mind, that's what I'm reading right now. Okay.
What are you listening to right now, be it music or podcast?
I'm not listening to any music at all these days. And one, because I wasn't listening to music while I was writing my book, because it was very distracting. Even instrumentals were too distracting to me. I needed like complete silence. But two, because an artist I really enjoyed and met a few times and really felt a good connection with passed away a few years ago. And it just like really just threw me off in a lot of messed up ways that I was like, oh, I don't even want to listen to that music anymore. So no music right now, but I'm really enjoying podcasts. I really enjoy the conversations that go places and that are exploratory. So my two favorites right now are Dark Horse podcast and the Joe Rogan Experience, because both of those folks, Dark Horse is Heather Haying and Brett Weinstein, and then of course Joe Rogan and his guests. They allow for long conversation to happen where there can be nuance and where there can be debate, discussion, and conversation in a way where it's not just to shout over the other person or to battle against each other like so much of the news is these days. It's like, hey, let's talk about that. Well, isn't that true? Well, what about that? Let's look that up and actually see if that's true. Well, what about this part of it? Oh, that's interesting. I didn't know about that part. And so in turn, listening to those, I don't not only learn more, I actually learn how to be a better conversationalist and debater of ideas simply by listening to other people do it and do it well.
Yeah. And the thing I like about certainly Joe Rogan, and a few others, is they, like you were saying, they allow the conversation and a healthy way to agree to disagree.
Yeah.
And be like, oh, you have a good point. I'm not going to change my position, but I see your point and where you're coming from, and like can affirm your perspective and still be okay in my own.
Yeah, I think that's really important. And I think seeing examples of that is great for me at this time in life where I'm like, I do want to be a better conversationalist and improve how I stand for ideas and how do I go into a conversation with someone I know I disagree with and come out positive for both of us.
Yeah. Okay, last one. What is your go-to restroom recovery method?
Oh gosh. Honestly, going in my bed in the middle of the afternoon, laying down with all the lights off, putting the heavy weighted pillows on top of my entire body so that it's like a heavy weighted blanket, putting my eye mask on, and then putting on like Tara Brach or a musical thing that's very like lulling to like that chill state, and just giving myself 15 minutes. And if I fall asleep, I fall asleep. If I just do that zone out where you're like, oh, it feels really good in my body right now, that's fine. Or if I just lay there and I'm like, cool, the next blog I have to write is this. I have to make sure I email that client back. I wonder what the dog is up to now. Then that's fine too. At least I do that. But something about that middle of the day, weight on my body, no stimulus at all other than the noise of the person talking. It's wonderful.
Yeah. When you were talking, I don't know if this is what you were talking about. I don't take naps a lot, but when I do, I like the half conscious ones where you can feel your body rest, but you kind of hear stuff in the background. Yeah, those are some of the best.
I love those
power naps or whatever you want to call it. Rest moment.
They're amazing. It's like exactly. You can feel your body being like, oh, okay, whew. And then I wake up, whatever. I get up out of the bed and I'm like, wow, I feel better. That's weird. Okay, perfect. I'll take it. I'm so grateful I work from home.
Well, thank you so much, Kate, again, for your time and insights. Appreciate you.
I really appreciate you too. It's a great conversation, and I'm really thankful to share my message with your people too.